I was on the Michigan podcast this week, and according to one Steve Dace, at least, in measuring the team talent, total talent team rankings, line up the T's, and however it gets communicated, 247, of course, has their rankings. He has his rankings, and it's a very logical, methodical process, but he believes Michigan is a decidedly more talented team than Ohio State. I don't really see it myself. I, of course, argued with him on that point, especially since Michigan just brought in the 18th recruiting class in the country, and Ohio State by player rating was at number 3 and number 5 overall, depending on your service, but in that top 5 range. We know that the game has flipped on the field. Obviously, everybody can read a scoreboard, but program building, program status, and place as a program is different than maybe a result on a given Saturday. So, Kevin, do you think there's been a major flip between these two?
I don't. I mean, I think Ohio State still, 1 to 85 is the more talented team. I think that right now we're seeing a case of where, Michigan just has come out and wanted it more. I mean, is really what it comes down to, has been able to out tough Ohio State. I know we hate using the whole toughness quotient or whatever, but I mean, there's something to be said about that. But I think if you go through a lot of the major positions and you look at room versus room, Ohio State is still the more talented team. I think Michigan has gotten a lot more out of its offensive line. I think that certainly if you go back to the 21 game, Michigan's gotten more out of its defensive line. I mean, and it carries over into 22. I just think that in terms of that 60 minutes, that Michigan has just played much better football for one reason or another, be it gameplay, be it or game plan, be it gameplay. I mean, everything there. But I don't look at the Michigan roster and say, wow, they're just so deep. I still am really challenged to go through their receiver room and say, well, that receiver room is up to snuff with Ohio State. I mean, and then when you look at Ohio State and Michigan in 2022, Ohio State came in very wounded at running back, as did Michigan. And just fortunately for Michigan on their side of it, Donovan Edwards was in much better position than anybody was for Ohio State. And strangely enough, we just didn't see Dallin Hayden. But I don't see a Michigan team that's even equal in terms of talent from 1 to 85. I think 1 to 22 has gotten a little bit closer, but I think that really the thing that's made the difference in the last 2 years is that Michigan has had a better game plan, has just executed a lot better.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that it's a case where in they've been 2 decisive wins. Goodness, my
I thought that was your basement, Mark. I'll go, and then Steve can go after. Yeah.
Good Lord.
You good, Steve?
Yeah, a stupid ESPN window just fired off a video, and you hate that. I'm going to get rid of all those right now. There's people at ESPN. Yeah, I don't see it as being such a big disparity talent-wise, or that Michigan's usurped Ohio State in terms of talent. I mean, you think about all the blue chip prospects Ohio State has signed, and how many of them are lined up to start this coming season. I mean, McCord, if he's the starter, was a national top 100 player. Travion Henderson, one of the best running backs. Obviously, Harrison and Igbuka, highly rated. Just on down the line. I mean, Donovan Jackson, there weren't many offensive linemen in the country ranked ahead of him. And then, on the other side, Tui Maloau and Sawyer were both national top 10 players. I mean, and Sonny Styles, if he starts at safety, try that 10 times faster. Sonny Styles, if he starts at safety, he was a national top 25 guy. I mean, I don't know. You go up and down the line. People on one of my chats yesterday, one of the questions was, who are some of the great unheralded Buckeyes that have come through over the years? And it was names like James Laurinaitis, who was a 3-star, I suppose. I said Craig Krenzel, who was the 3rd-string quarterback who ended up being them to a national championship. Cardale Jones, kind of in the same vein. and Donnie Nicky way back, and a lot of guys over the years. Malcolm Jenkins wasn't really that highly touted, but ended up being a mainstay for 4 years. So I'd say your two linebackers would probably fit that tab. Tommy Eichenberg, just kind of a plugger who's become a all Big Ten guy, and Steele Chambers, a converted running back, a self-made guy who's worked his way into being a very good linebacker. So I like the trajectory of this team for 2023. I really do. I mean, you have to be a little bit gun shy after they've lost 2 games each of the last 2 years and the way that they've lost. But I see so much talent across the board that I wouldn't say it's foolproof, but you lose to Wisconsin. That's really not that big a deal because it's not in your division. Provided you win the rest of your games, you're going to the Big Ten championship. You lose to Notre Dame, it's really not that big a deal. It's a non-conference game, doesn't impact you. But the one that really does stand out that is an absolute must win is Michigan. And they have to win that game this year. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't go to Indianapolis again. Michigan would have to have 2 losses for Ohio State to still get there. So, we're sitting here on February the 8th thinking about 2023 football season, but just on paper, I think you got to like Ohio State where they're at. I mean, if the quarterback and the offensive line come through, look out. They're going to be dynamite. I don't have any doubt about that.
Well, Steve, you can see behind me, I'm at the Horseshoe already, ready for spring ball. It's 4 weeks from yesterday is when
the sun
first
is
practice.
out. I'll say this. I got sunshine here in Pataskala, so it does match up.
And so we're 4 weeks away from the start of spring ball. And, every year on Buckeye Weekly, we will go through like a tail of the tape and compare Ohio State and Michigan position by position and see and judge who is best. I think if you do that now, you look at the backfields, Michigan's quarterback, you would check that box. However, Ohio State's quarterback is going to put up more yards and points than J.J. McCarthy. So at the end of the season, who would you give that check to? I think you can say Michigan's running backs with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are better, but that's all they have. Ohio State's room goes deeper. Go ahead and give Michigan that checkbox. Offensive line, if you want to give that to Michigan, I think you can. Tight ends, I think you give that to Ohio State right now because of what Michigan has lost. But defensively, Michigan, you're not going to give them the defensive tackles. You're not going to give Michigan a defensive end. You're not going to give Michigan the linebackers with Junior Colson and Michael Barrett over Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers. I think maybe the best player on Michigan's defense is Will Johnson, but he's their only cornerback at this point. Ohio State, if you want to give Michigan the cornerbacks, I'm okay with that. Safeties, they've got Rod Moore as perhaps their best. They return a lot of guys. I don't know that they have many playmakers there. Maybe, I like Rod Moore. I don't know that is as cut and dry in terms of which team you choose there. I don't think I'm with Kevin. The 1 through 85 is Ohio State. I'm not sure. And I've said this in the past. I know Steve does, breakdowns of years and starts and all of these different numbers. And he swears by it. I don't think you can go 1 through 85 and actually have that honestly as a conversation. When you look at where the recruiting rankings of the second half of Michigan's class is usually like from the 400s to 500s to the 900s, whereas the second half of Ohio State's class is in the 200s and 300s.